Hey guys, it's Camus and back with another edition of Chess Beauty. It's been a while, but there is life besides chess. I happen to be broadcasting from the Summer Palace here in the Berkshires, so I have a couple of days. Maybe I'll get a couple of these done and sort of fill in the gaps a little bit. At the end of the last Chess Beauty, we left you with this cunning little position. This is from Grigoriev, 1922, and it is white to play and win. Have a go at it. Okay, so perhaps you found in your investigation that this is not quite so simple. This was a study designed to illustrate the concept of corresponding squares. I remember getting a endgame book by Edmar Mednis, I think it's, well, Mednis anyway, years ago, and had a chapter on corresponding squares. I remember looking at it, and through my young chess eyes, they just instantly glazed over and decided, I'll come back and study that later. It looks too complicated. And indeed, it's actually complicated to explain, but it's a relatively simple concept. The idea of corresponding squares is that if the black king is on a certain square, then the white king has to be on a certain square, and vice versa. Okay, so let's understand this position. The first thing that we need to understand is that when the white king is on f4, the black king must be on f6. Why is this so? Okay, well, let's before we do that, let's look at what happens if white tries to play e7 immediately. Plays e7, king takes e7, king takes f5, king to f7, and black has the opposition. And this is just a book draw. Okay, now black needs to be on a square that both stops this e pawn and also defends f5. So this is his unfortunate task in this position. Okay, so why does he have to be on f6 and not g6? Well, let's take a look at this position. If he's on g6 when white is on f4, then the pawn runs. e7, king to f7, king takes f5, king takes e7, king g6, king d8, king f7, king f6, king to e8, king to e6, king to d8, king takes d6, king to e8, king to c7, king to e7, d6, and we're winning here. Okay, so he cannot be on g6. You have to trust me on this analysis. This is actually the Rybka's best line. Of course, there are many other variations, but they all win for white. So let's just go on here. So back to our original position. Okay, so he has to be on f6 when we're on f4. Now, let's look at another position. If the white king is on h4, then the black king must be on g6. Because if he goes to h6, for instance, then the pawn runs. Okay, so he has to go to g6 in order to hold the game. Let's see here. Where are we? Oops, getting messed up. King to g6. Yeah, all right. And all right, so when white is on h4, black must be on g6. And remember, when he's on f4, black must be on f6. So now, if the white king is on g3, let's find this. King to g3. He's threatening both f4 and h4. And remember, black needs to be on g6 for h4, and he needs to be on f6 for f4. So he needs to be on a square that has access to both g6 and f6. And the only square is g7. Okay, so now we know the corresponding squares. Let's go back to the start position. You can see by this chart here, oops, excuse me. You can see by this chart, this has worked out the corresponding squares for this position. So when he's on a green square, he needs to be, when he's on f4, the black king needs to be on f6. If he's on h3, then he also has to be on f6, and if he's on h4, he has to be on g6. If he's on f3, he also has to be on g6, and if he's on g3, he needs to be on g7. Hopefully this is clear enough. Okay, you can work this out yourself and see that it's so. So how do we win this position? Okay, well, what we do is we play something like king to f3, and from the corresponding positions, we know that when the white king is on f3, we need to be on g6. But now we go to g2, and this is a problem for black because on g2 we're threatening f3, g3, and h3. That means black must have access to g7, g6, and f6. But there is no such square available in this position. There would be a square at f7 that would have access to all three of these squares, but it's currently controlled by the white pawn. So this is the winning maneuver. We get to h2, and now black has a dilemma. What does he play? Let's say he plays f6. Then we play h3, because normally black would want to move on to f6 when we're on h3, but he's already on it, and so he's got to move off instead. King to g7, king to g3, king to f6, king f4, and now this is the original position except it's black to move, and this makes all the difference in the world. King to e7, king to f5, king to e8, king to f6, king to f8, e7 check, king to e8, king to f5, king takes e7, king to g6, king to d8, king to f7, king to d7, king to f6, king to e7, king to c7, king to e6, and now black cannot defend the pawn. King to d8 takes, king to e8, king to c7, king to f7, and this is the position that we had before. Okay, so from g2, that's one of the bad choices that black can make. The other bad choice is king to g7. Now here we go to g3 because black needed to be on g7 when we were on g3, but he's already on it, which means he has to move off of it. King to g3, king to f6, king to f4, king to g6, e7, king to f7, king takes f5, king takes e7, king to g6, king to d8, king to f7, king to d7, king to f6, king to c8, king to e7, king to c7, king to e6, king to d8, king to d6, and we're winning as before. Okay, so the solution, once again, let's move back to the initial position, is to go to a square that threatens to go to any of three squares that can't be matched by black, which looks rather odd. So king to g6, g2. This threatens these three squares here. And black has no square that he can go to that answers all three of these threats. Okay, so I hope you understood this. It sounds a lot more complicated, but it's related to the principle of triangulation, I suppose, and opposition. And it's a reminder that you need lots of time in the endgame for even these seemingly very simple positions as in king and pawn endgames. All right. Now, let's take a little break from the heavy theoretical discussion of corresponding squares in the endgame and look at our next position. This, we will save this. We'll go on to this position. And this is white to play and win. You can see there's an approximate material equality, and we're threatening a big time discovered check, possibly winning the black queen in this position, but it's not as simple as it looks. So anyway, try to work it out, and we'll catch up to you on the next Chess Beauty. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.